Well, a very, very happy Monday and welcome to the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is November 3rd, 2025. And I'm taking a little different approach here, trying to experiment with what works and what doesn't work when it comes down to the podcasting schedule. I know last couple of weeks I have been off and I've been doing two episodes, um, cramming a lot of information in as much as possible. And so I decided that I'm going to take a different approach and do a little bit different of outcomes when it comes down to podcasting. On today's episode, I would like to just take the moment and wrap up the 2025 Major League Baseball season as we want to congratulate the Los Angeles Dodgers for winning the World Series here this year, as they have now won back-to-back World Series. Last year, they beat the New York Yankees 4-1, and then this year, they beat the Toronto Blue Jays in a 4-3. And I was kind of just reflecting back on the postseason this past month. And I got to be, I was kind of like, all right, what was my favorite moments of this year's postseason, or favorite matchups, to say the least? And I think the two matchups that came to to my conclusion has to be debatable between the ALCS, Seattle Mariners, and Toronto Blue Jays. Where the Blue Jays won in the best out of seven, Game 7, or the World Series between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, where the Dodgers won. And the reason why those two series have been my favorite this postseason is because I think the Mariners and the Blue Jays were arguably the top two favorable teams out of the American League playoff contestants. I thought the wild card series, with the two division rival games, were fun and interesting to watch. You had a good 5-game series with the Tigers and Mariners, while you enjoyed it a nice, easy, comfortable, I'm going to say, dominance between the Blue Jays and the Yankees. But it really picked up when the Mariners and Blue Jays came into the picture. And it almost looked like to me how this playoff season ran. Was kind of the teams who won in advance ended up gassing out, kind of running out of energy. The Dodgers, walked in, took care of business against the Reds in the wild card round, and fair to do so, because they beat the Reds throughout the season, both home and away. And that the Dodgers play a different type of baseball when it comes down to the postseason. And so, one of my, an anticipating series that I thought was supposed to be really, very hyped up, that I was kind of let down, was the Dodgers and Phillies in the NLDS. Dodgers advance in a 3-1 victory in that series, and then takes on and sweeps for shutting out the Milwaukee Brewers to make it back to the World Series. And so we get down to this World Series matchup. And for me, what's going through my head is you have the Toronto Blue Jays as the underdog. They're going to be every city, every town, every state, except if you are maybe from Los Angeles, wants the Blue Jays to win. My brother, has been a Blue Jays fan for, I'm going to say, about a decade now. Okay. This was his moment, right? You got Max Scherzer, you got, you have Bichette, you have, Vladimir Guerrero. There's a lot of talent on this Blue Jays team. That if any team in the American League can pull off an upset and beat the Dodgers, it would be the Blue Jays, in my opinion. And they gave the Dodgers a run for their money, forcing 7 games. They took them 18 innings in one game. They forced the Dodgers to earn this World Series with the final game this past Saturday, where the Dodgers won in extra innings. So I was kind of reflecting back over the last couple of years, and I don't know if this is because I've kind of just been checked out of baseball, but this year postseasons have really got me hooked on, and so I was paying attention. It wasn't because of the Reds making it to the postseason, but it was the teams and the hype, the build up. We got to see some new teams. But the Dodgers are back in, and they won back-to-back years. I think I think, in my opinion, baseball is one of the most difficult sports to win back-to-back seasons with. You have 162 games. There's a lot of traveling. It's a series by series event. I know I'll probably get people who will disagree with me on that matter, but I truly believe that baseball is very difficult, almost nearly impossible to win back-to-back years. And look, now the Dodgers are going to go for a three-peat if they can. And why not? And who says that they don't have the talent? Because most teams who can come in and win a World Series doesn't have the same success than they did that season, right? Contracts end, free, people become free agencies. Maybe you're tapped out of money, but when you look at the Dodgers, they kind of are that. They're kind of it seems that they don't have a payroll. It seems like their payroll is endless. Everybody would want to be a Dodger at some point in their career. And, if any team can make a three-peat happen, it's the Dodgers. I like to consider the Dodgers the Kansas City Chiefs of Major League Baseball. They don't have to get off to a fast start like most of these other teams. They don't have to worry about health. Health is, players getting hurt is obviously an issue, but they have depth that if someone gets hurt, they bring in, and the opportunity provided for these minor leaguers, they just fill in the shoes as if it's just an everyday business, and they bring success with them. It's almost a culture. Winning is a culture for the Dodgers. Okay, they take terrible people, they bring them into LA, and look at it. They become Hall of Famers. Right? So it's not, it's almost like if you come to Los Angeles, you play for the Dodgers, you just win. There's no alternative. There's no, sure, you're going to have your ups and downs, but there's no failing. That's not an option here. And so that's one thing that maybe, resonates. If you get a moment, resonate, love them, hate them, right? They're the New England Patriots in a dynasty standpoint, where you are tired of seeing them year in and year out in championship games and postseason games, dominating the division. I know that the Padres absolutely hate dealing with the Dodgers. The entire National League, nonetheless the National League West, absolutely hate dealing with the Dodgers. But I prefer that, we had a tough division, we had a good division, and I could prove to you that we had a good division because our team, or one of our teams, won the World Series, and that was the Dodgers. So the NL West comes to a head that they are probably a really good division. This year We see the Padres trying to beat the Dodgers. They've had some opportunities that they did not take advantage of, and they failed, right? But, you know, in recent years, every now and then we'll see, a team like the Rockies or the D-backs. The Giants have had success early on in the Dodgers run. But, the Dodgers are that pivotal team. It was the NL West, which has always been notorious to being this top division in Major League Baseball because of the Dodgers taking on the top division in the American League in the AL East. It's not the Yankees, it's not the Red Sox. It's the Blue Jays, who kind of, they're an uptown, out of state, out of the country. They stay quiet, they stay to themselves, and they make splashes. So, man, it's, I was looking back on it. The Dodgers made it look easy this year in the postseason. When we thought that Philadelphia and Milwaukee were contenders, they came in, they took care of business. And I guess, hey, for a Cincinnati Reds fan, let's reflect back. Hey, the team that beat us, the team that eliminated us, was the team that won the World Series. So congratulations to the Dodgers for another World Series win. I'm looking forward to seeing them back in the postseason again next year. They've been to a postseason 14 years. 15 out of the last 20 years, they've been to a postseason, which I think is an incredible run. You think about when this all started, a guy like Clayton Kershaw, who we'll talk about in the moment, but you had, Matt Kemp. I think it's impressive to see how they have been able to adapt and grow, and look who they have. Guys like Teoscar Hernandez and Shohei Ohtani and, Mookie Betts that, I think it draws into my next conversation, and point is what is it going to take to beat the Dodgers? And what can you learn from the Dodgers? The one thing I know is that you can't try to recreate the Dodgers on the field. There are very little teams that can financially compete with what the Dodgers have to offer when it comes down to contracts. And yet we've still seen them fail. Like, look at the Yankees, for example. The Yankees lost to the Blue Jays and have all this star talent. So you're not going to be able to recreate them financially on paper. And when you have a team like the Dodgers, where you're winning, it's just a culture thing, it's a winning way, players gravitate to that. So if you see someone on the free agent market, or if you are a baseball player on the free agent market and you get the Dodgers in a contract right in front of you, compared to, let's say, the Cincinnati Reds, there's both have rich history in the sport, but the Reds are a little bit older. I think 9 out of 10 times, the players you would probably choose for the Dodgers. They're winning now. The Reds still have some growth, and they're always unpredictable. They've been predictable in a negative way. So that's another episode for another conversation. So, you can't there's not many teams that can try to compete financially with the Dodgers. So majority of the other teams rely, and maybe you can try to improve your farm system. Maybe you can try to improve on your scouting and get better players from scouts. But I think realistically, looking at this, I wouldn't rely on my farm system to make or break a player, because I've seen too many players be phenomenal in the minor leagues, but when they come up to the major leagues and they get all that rust off of them, and They settle into the league. They just turn out to be an average player. Scouting. We go. I would go back to the whole Billy Bean. You don't have that crystal ball, and you can't predict when that player's the next top. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani caliber. And you do hope that you pick someone else that can at least make it to the major leagues, nonetheless be someone who can be remembered. Because also 9 out of 10 times they're going to get traded to a different team also. Um, so it's kind of that conundrum because the Dodgers are that pedestal. They are the top of the pyramid, the team to beat in all of baseball, not just in the National League. They've proven that. But there's no formula. There's no system in place of how to get there. At least not, you can't take that from the Dodgers. Now you can try to trade someone to the Dodgers and get someone back. You could try to pick up a free agent from the Dodgers and just try to pick their brain and get some wisdom from what, in comparison of what Dodgers, the Dodgers organization does successfully that you could try to implement into your own, clubhouse. But you can't, you don't really have much to go off of. They're just a good team. And that's it. Point blank, period. Like I said, we've seen the Yankees. They are kind of the next team that has that unlimited payroll. They have players that you want to go become a Yankee and play in the Bronx and play at Yankee Stadium. I know I would. It's kind of like one of those historical monument areas like Wrigley Field and Fenway Park. You just be a Yankee for you as a player, regardless if you're liked or not. It's one of those moments where you could cherish for a lifetime. Um, all of that, right? The Yankees are up there. Then you have teams like the Cubs and Red Sox. Maybe they have a little bit better financial aquiline that hey, we could pay you, but you really go there for the memory, for being a part of a history that is so rich, such sacred ground that you play on at these stadiums. But then you get down that list. You get like the Padres. Padres are trying to find ways every couple of years. They have to break down their team. They've been building it up, over the last 5-6 years with Tatis and Machado and Musgrove, but they've come so close, but they've always failed. That's that term of close but no cigar, right? And so then you get like the Reds. We don't the Reds ain't financially going to support what the Dodgers do. They can't support what the Reds do, what the Padres do. The Reds can't even support what the Cubs do on the field or on and off the field. They're playing a whole different ball game. They have a whole different strategy, and we have seen it work. We've seen it work with the Guardians and with the Cubs in the years past. But they you just can't this is what makes it so dangerous, is because you can't, and so scary at the same time, because you just can't recreate the Dodgers on the field, and if you do, you're going to lose. I'll tell you, see the Blue Jays here. They do have a rich history. They don't have rich history. They do have a good chemistry. They got a good set of group of people. Especially with Clayton Kershaw, not Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer deciding that he's going to probably come back for another season. I think you just got to stay with the momentum. It sucks. I think it's drilling because now you have to start back at 0 in 162 ball games and hope everything goes the way you want it to give yourself another opportunity to win a World Series. But, I think the Blue Jays, they're in a tough division. AL East, I tell you, the Yankees, they're always up there. I think they're always a consistent team that has success. The Red Sox showed that even though they can unwind a little bit, they were still able to make it back to the postseason. I know the Orioles and the Rays have had some off years, but It's always any given moment that they can. There's not just one dominating team in the AL East, so it is up for grabs. And I think Toronto is still a fan favorite to win that division, to have a lot of success next year. I think that you continue to build off the momentum. I think that clock is kind of ticking now, but um, you stay with it, and I look to see the Blue Jays back in the postseason again next year. We talk about the clock is ticking, and there's a couple of teams here on that list that was in the postseason this year that the clock is ticking favorably in the National League. But before we'll cover those teams, the Seattle Mariners, I think they still hang their head up high. I think they have momentum. I think it's one thing to, hey, let's knock off the Astros in the postseason. I think that was a huge accomplishment for what they have to offer. And I think that they should continue to build off of that and thrive. I mean, Kyle Raleigh had a phenomenal season, and I think they were my runners up to being a favorite team to be in the World Series. And, it could have gone either way. And you start playing the whole what if game. Well, what if the Mariners were in the postseason instead in the World Series, except for the Blue Jays? But that clock is not it's not almost out. I think it's just beginning, and I think that the AL West has something to look forward to in the Mariners, but they have to show consistency. I've seen too many times the Mariners have a good year, have a strong year, but then they take 10 steps backwards. Teams that are that we saw in the postseason that are with that clock ticking. Milwaukee, for one, I think their clock is ticking. They're trying to reestablish themselves. They're trying to break things down while keeping their status quo up to date. Philadelphia, this was a dangerous team I saw 5 or 6 years ago, getting Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, JT Romito, and yet they don't have nothing to show for it. And it hasn't always been Dodgers, so they missed some opportunities. And I know they have a few years left on their on some of the players, but they got to kind of shape it up. I would hate to see a guy like Bryce Harper, be a talent of a player as he is, to go without getting an opportunity to have a World Series ring. The Padres, I try to stay connected with San Diego and their sports news. And one of the things that I've looked at here over the past few weeks since being eliminated from the postseason is that Brian Snicker, is it Brian Snicker? Mike Schilt, excuse me, already going back into retirement. This is a team that needs to get on the same page. I think they have a talent. I think that they can overcome the talent. They just need the right, source, the right manager, GM, to pull the reins. AJ Preller does a phenomenal job building this team, and I would hate to see all this investment go to waste. Yeah, they're winning great, but until you win the big one and go to that dance, it doesn't mean anything. So those clocks are ticking, and they got to win. And there's no clock ticking for the Dodgers, because whenever they seem like they're going south, they'll find a way to get back on top. At the end of the season, kind of always time to reflect back on players who may be hanging it up this year. Max Scherzer said that he didn't want to leave the season after losing the World Series to the Dodgers. Didn't feel comfortable leaving and retiring the way he ended the World Series. So he plans on being back again another year. I think that's great. Walk off into that sunset. Hopefully it doesn't come back to haunt him. There's guys like Jesse Chavez, Matt Carpenter, Trevor Cahill, that all look to retire late this year. What a honorable moment, I think, on Saturday when the Dodgers won the World Series as left-handed pitcher Clayton Kershaw uh, is intends to retire here. He had a 11-2 record this season, had a 3.36 ERA with 80 strikeouts. Overall career, he had 223 wins, 96 losses, an ERA of 2.53, which I think is incredible. He only missed 4 games, but well, he had 455 games, only started in 451, and he's had a total pitched for a total of 2,855 innings for 3,052 strikeouts, which I think is a Hall of Fame career in my books. He's played from '08 to 25, and I grew up a lot around Kershaw. I always dreaded facing him each and every time he took the ball against the Padres. Um, you knew what he had to offer, and he was nothing less of that. A career that says 1,000 words here. That he when you watched him, took I you stopped and just watched. Nothing else in the world mattered. You paid attention to what he had to give, and you really wanted to see if the opposite team can hit against him. And you know, no one's perfect, of course, but I think those are really good numbers for the season and the career to be a Dodger that long. I think is remarkable. So if he does, follow through in his retirement, I would personally say thank you. Hopefully he hears this and takes my thank you for being a fan. Sometimes your greatest fan is the ones that hate you the most. I'm going to reflect this back down to wrestling so much. So growing up, I've always hated JBL. He was on SmackDown. I always hated Booker T, but they made their character and their heel run so incredible that they really, you really hated them. You hated seeing them. They got in the way. It just ruined everything for you. After it's all said and done, you learn to appreciate those type of moments. Look, Clayton Kershaw is a fan favorite, I think, for Major League Baseball. Tom Brady, for all 31 other teams, everybody hated Tom Brady because he was successful, because he dominated. Everyone hated the Patriots because they won and they had success. Reflecting back on that dynasty and how successful they were, we learned and come to appreciate what they gave us for 20 years. The Kansas City Chiefs are one of the most hated teams right now in all of sports because they're successful. We could blame the refs, we can blame X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, they are successful. We don't like it because they've beaten our teams. They have beaten the teams that we've loved watching and supporting, and we wish our teams were that good. Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers are one of those dynasty teams that we hate, but we reflect back on the Dodgers' success over the last decade, and we come to appreciate it because these are the little things in life, in the sports of baseball, that we cherish the most. So maybe I didn't enjoy it as much as we going through it because we got beat every time. But I did enjoy Clayton Kershaw and what he had to offer. So the 2025 season has come to an end. And what does this mean for Major League Baseball? Well, one thing's for certain. We know the teams that are going to come back and have something to fight for. There's a handful of teams that want to come back and revenge the Dodgers, Reds, Phillies, Milwaukee. Seattle was so close to going to the World Series. They want to get over that hump. They're going to have a gripe out against the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays were so close for winning a World Series and upsetting the Dodgers, and they fell short. Yankees always look to improve. The Mets are embarrassed for getting, having such, they had a promising season the first half of the year, and they came out not even in the postseason. But the Reds want to improve, build from their grounds. And we will have many more conversations during the offseason as we see managers get hired, players get traded, free agency gets signed. I don't know if it's going to be big, if it's going to be a loud winner, if it's going to be a small winner. Obviously, we have these Cincinnati Reds that are looking forward to, they took care of their first step, was having a winning season and going to the postseason. I think they took 2 steps out of 1. How can they improve off of that? Or are they going to be their notorious Cincinnati Reds where they just they don't give up, but they start breaking down and trading everyone away? So that's what we have looking forward to over the next several weeks for the off season of Major League Baseball. Obviously, we'll still, the Dodgers are looking to make a three-peat. And if any team has the opportunity in doing so, the Dodgers are a favorite in that case. They're in a division that doesn't know what to do with themselves half the time. And with the Padres re-looking at themselves, trying to find a manager that could carry this team to overcome the Dodgers, right now I marked that the Dodgers win the NL West yet again. And I marked that the Dodgers would even go back to the World Series next year. That's an early prediction, not a spoiler. But hopefully something across the next year can change my mind. That is all the time we have for our episode today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Wherever you guys are listening to your podcast, be sure to check us out on our TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel for all the latest information and coverage and podcast episodes. We also put CPU gaming content in baseball, football season, as we are halfway through the NFL Madden 26 season, and WWE 2K Universe Mode. Until next time, thank you guys for tuning in, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.